Candide continued. We left Candide in South America. He had just fled from Buenos Aires. Konigonde remained in Buenos Aires with the old woman. Candide fled with Cacambo. He flees to where the Jesuits are, and he is interviewed. He's a captain, after all. He's interviewed right away by a very high-ranking person. They dine together outdoors, but with elegant utensils and elegant surroundings. The ambience, French surroundings, very elegant and natural. Suddenly they realize, well, they're speaking German because both are German, and suddenly they realize who each recognizes the other. The colonel is Kunigonde's brother, and they embrace, tears flow, and then they start to talk again, and Candide tells him that no, his sister is not dead, his sister is very much alive, and he had just left her in Buenos Aires. Not only that, but he's going to marry her. What? Says the brother, who is very class conscious, arrogant really. You don't have a coat of arms. My family has 64 quarters in its coat of arms, which means is a very old and very distinguished family, and he, the baron, the young baron, we'll call him, will never permit, would never countenance or endure, or brook, trying to think of vocabulary words here, all meaning tolerate, Candide's marrying his sister. In fact, he gets so angry that he takes out his sword and taps Candide on the face, the flat side of the sword, with his sword. Candide pulls out his sword and stabs the baron. And then poor Candide, oh, what have I done? What have I done? Oh God, I've killed my own true love's brother. And I killed the Grand Inquisitor before, and the Jew before. Oh, a curse on me. What are we going to do? I'm dead. Cacambo, quick-witted, just like the old woman, says, quick, change clothes with the baron. Put on the baron's Jesuit robe, black robe, but with special ornamentation on it as a colonel. And Cacambo calls out, make way for the baron, or the colonel. Make way for the colonel. They ride out, and they're gone. Cacambo, quick-witted, practical. Wonderful. They ride and ride and ride into the wilderness. They can't go that way, back to Buenos Aires. They can't stay in Paraguay. They ride and ride. And soon the horses die, and then they walk and walk. And according to Voltaire, they pass rivers, valleys, impassable valleys and rivers, deserts. They descend cliffs that no one could descend somehow. It doesn't matter. Though they ride along a river. They ride along a river. Dangerous river. The point is, they are reaching an inaccessible place. A place where no one, or almost no one, could ever reach. Finally, they come to an inhabited place where they meet people. But they also see that on the streets, in the mud, are gold, diamonds, emeralds, the most precious stones, valuable things. And children are playing with these things and then throwing them away. No one cares about them at all. They start to collect these things in disbelief. Finally, they ask someone about them, the schoolmaster, in fact, and the schoolmaster says, yes, you are in El Dorado. El Dorado, meaning the city of gold, covered with gold, or golden, made gold. A fabled, legendary place. And, of course, everything is valuable, and therefore nothing is valuable. Everyone has easy access to all these things, therefore they don't have much value. But everyone treats everyone else with kindness. There is no greed. Greed about what? That's key. In other words, this is a land of peace, prosperity, and goodness. In short, what this is paradise. But this is paradise rediscovered. And notice where we are geographically. We have passed from Germany to South America, all the way across South America to this place. And Candide, who had been expelled from paradise, now finds himself welcome in paradise, welcome back. They stay for a few weeks. They talk to the king talks with them. They discover a kind of peace, a kind of virtue, a kind of happiness. But at the end of this time, they are bored. Candide wants to find Konigonde again. He misses her. Cacambo simply wants adventure, and there is no adventure here. And Cacambo has a great line. He says, "It's so wonderful to be able to tell people where one has been." He means it in a pretty innocent sense, but it's still impressing people. So, here's the point. Man rejects paradise if he gets a second chance at it. He will reject it. Wow, what a thought. What a thought. Now, they go to the king. The king says, "Sure, you're welcome to leave, and you can take anything with you." And he makes them a present of 100 sheep. These are strange sheep. They can carry inside them a lot of stuff. So, these 100 sheep are stuffed with diamonds, gold, rubies, emeralds, all these precious stones. But how to get out? They even invent a pulley system which allows them to raise these themselves and these sheep up out of the valley where they are to the inaccessible peaks that they have to cross in order to get out of there. So, as Voltaire wittily says, having been, they resolved to cease to be happy. They chose to reject happiness. But happiness would have to be qualified there because they want other things. Okay. They start to try to get out of this inaccessible region, and of course they lose sheep after sheep after sheep. Finally, they get to the coast of French or Dutch Guiana, way in the north. They have 2 sheep left, but those 2 sheep are worth. They have the 2 sheep left. Now they notice they pass a black man, and the black man has 1 arm, having lost the other, and 1 leg, having lost the other. They question him. The man is a slave, of course, and he had worked in Dutch Guiana in the sugar trade, which made the Dutch millions, of course, typical of the colonial world. And he worked in a mill. But when some item of clothing or a finger or something got caught in the mill, they didn't stop the mill and revert the mill. They just cut off the limb. And anytime anybody tried to run away, they cut off a leg. Brutal, brutal, brutal. The Dutch famous for their brutality in their colonial system, but others almost as brutal. Anyway, Voltaire on slavery, of course, and this in 1759. As he says, this kind of thing is the price that we pay to have sugar in Europe. Voltaire really was a humanitarian, and he protested against cruelty or exploitation whenever he could find it. He deserves a lot of credit. A lot of credit. Okay, so they settle in an inn, but Candide is so naive and so trusting, and so they look for a ship to carry them out of there. First, though, Candide gives to Cacambo $10 million in stones, sends Cacambo to Buenos Aires because he wants Cacambo to buy back Konigonde from the governor there, and then meet him in Europe. They will meet in Europe because, of course, they want to go back to Europe. Okay, Cacambo goes, and they shed tears when they part from each other because they have become close friends. Cacambo is not just a servant, and imagine this, because this will be important later. Candide is giving $10 million to his servant, saying, spend that money on my mistress and meet me in Europe, trusting him. But there's no question Cacambo is trustworthy. Cacambo is very devoted to Candide on a personal level, just like the old woman is very devoted to Konigonde on a personal level. And as she herself says, she values Kunigonde's happiness more than her own. Why? Because Kunigonde is such a wonderful person? No, she's not. It's a mystery. But what? It's true. It exists in life, no question. People who, for some reason, become so devoted to other people that the well-being of those other people, and I don't mean lovers or spouses even, not a sexual matter or a gender matter at all, but their subjection, let's say, or their submission and their service to that other person is their happiness. Well, there's a saying in the Book of Common Prayer in the Anglican Church, in his service is my joy, happiness, beatitude maybe, beatitude, blessedness. The point is, service of God is joy, doesn't just bring some reward. And of course, it's so wonderful to get beyond. I've got to talk about this sometime, on a level of prayer especially, 6 levels of prayer that I find impressive. But it's so difficult in religion, as in life, to get beyond what is called do ut des. I give so that you might give. I pray God, I serve God so that I might reap the reward, of course, that awaits me. To get beyond that is very difficult in human life. Seldom achieved, I'm sure. But anyway, back to Candide. And then Candide hires a ship to take him and his sheep to Europe. The Spanish captain of the vessel says, Candide says, okay, how much? The captain says $1,000, which is already high. Candide says, no problem. So the Spaniard thinks, well, this guy has a lot of money. Later he sends a message to him back at his inn. The price has changed, 2,000. No problem. Boy, this guy must have something in those sheep. So he then arranges with Candide. First, send the sheep to my ship this evening, and then tomorrow morning you come and board the ship, and we will sail in the morning. Candide, trusting always, no problem, sends the sheep out there, sleeps at the inn, and the next morning, but I've got something more to tell you, the next morning he will go to the port and see the ship disappearing on the horizon. Gone. His sheep are gone. He still had a couple of diamonds or something, but my God. Meanwhile, back at the inn, he hires another boat, and on the boat he pays people to tell them his life story. No. It's at the inn, because I see. At the inn, he pays some people to tell his life story. And the life story which wins his greatest sympathy is that of Martin. Martin the Manichee. And here's the last member of the future community. The final member of the community, Martin the Manichee. First, a Manichee is a person who, St. Augustine had been a Manichee, but Manichaeism is a timeless heresy. And I need to talk about this for a minute because it's very important. Manichaeism is a classical form of dualism. Dualism is the view of life that proposes two principles at work in the universe. Not just one, God, but two. I think I've talked about this before, but a long time ago. I'm not even sure. Anyway, the idea here is a Manichee observes evil, suffering. Let's say a person is living during the Third Reich, Hitler, or a person living in North Korea now. So much suffering, so much pain. The Manichee thinks it's impossible that there be a omniscient, omnivalent, omnibenevolent God. This is impossible. It must be that there are two principles at work in the universe. One of goodness, of light, love, knowledge, whatever. The other of darkness, evil, sin. And these two principles have almost equal power. Now the Manichee, like most dualists, believes that eventually, in the war between the forces of light and darkness, good and evil, light will win. But meanwhile, that struggle is a close one. And that struggle takes place in the human soul, very believable, as well as in the world. This is Manichaeism, which of course tries to account for all the evil and suffering in the world, and this is the way they do it. Now, Christianity has always fought against this. In the New Testament, the form this took was Gnosticism, G-N. Gnosticism is even a view that is basically dualistic, but it supposes that we are saved by knowledge. God lets vessels of light enter the world, and some special chosen people are exposed to this light and have knowledge, and they know how to gain salvation, and by following them, we can maybe be saved too. Okay, Christianity was hard-pressed, St. Paul especially, to oppose this. And even the Gospel of John is somewhat Gnostic, but when John says in chapter 3, verse 16, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, blah, 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 he is saying, no, Gnosticism is wrong. God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. There are no two principles. But in chapter 1 and 2, light, darkness, and man loved the darkness. Light, darkness. Christ came in the world to bring light, but man loved the darkness. The terms are entirely dualistic. But the big chapter 3, verse 16 is an anthem that sings out against dualism. And then in the letter, John, the Johannine letter, John 3, which is a hymn to love also, in the end, no, not dualistic, not convincingly. But Paul writes against Gnosticism, dualism all the time. Okay, Martin is a very skeptical, not sometimes cynical guy. And, of course, Candide is shocked. Candide, who is still holding on to Pangloss's teaching that this is the best of all possible worlds. And so the two will converse constantly, and Candide will fall a little under the influence of Martin, because it's hard not to. Martin seems to be so right. For example, they're riding in the ship. This is the best example of all. They're crossing the ocean, and their ship comes to a place where two ships are fighting, a Dutchman and a Spanish ship. And the ship that Candide and Martin are in can come very close and watch this battle going on. And in the end, the Spanish ship is sunk, and it sinks. And as Candide's ship is passing by, two sheep float up to the surface. Oh my God! Oh my God! My sheep! Look, Martin, God has punished that Spanish captain who stole my sheep, and has even returned my sheep to me. The best of all possible worlds. Martin says, very memorably, okay, maybe God, let's say, punished the Spaniard who had taken the sheep. But Satan punished the other 99 people on board the ship who had to drown for this punishment, for God to punish the Spaniard. Wow. Wow. Very impressive. So, really the point is, I would say, let's hit a serious point here. The point is that anyone who thinks he or she sees God's hand at work in any human activity is very foolish, or very, my favorite word, disingenuous. Because anytime we see anything happen almost, it will be good for some and not good for others. That's true too, materially at least. But to claim to see God's hand at work is folly. Is folly. It's faith, of course, because only faith can do that. Only faith can say, thanks God for making this happen. But in truth, this is pure superstition, because God's ways are unknown to us. And anytime we make such statements, we are really, I think, committing a sacrilege. We are saying, I understand, God. I see you at work, and I approve your work. Good job, God. This is blasphemy. This is human arrogance, human petty arrogance at work again. We can say, thank you, God, if your will is at work here. That's the best we can say. But if we say, thanks, God, I see what you did here. I approve, too. We're friends. God, you have my approval. Do you see what I mean? This is human petty arrogance and stupidity and superstition, I think. Okay, no, we don't know how God works. We can't know. God is vast. We are tiny, vain, silly creatures, incapable of, I think maybe incapable of seeing seriousness even if we saw it, or seeing it for what it is. Seldom, anyway. Okay, sorry, but that's a good point, and Voltaire is great. As I say, I'll say it again. I said it in a line in a poem, in my poem. Voltaire stumbled onto truth in this book. Stumbled. It's a miracle. He didn't know what he was doing. In that line he did, but later no. Okay, continuing. The ship moves on and on and on over the sea. They land in England, but they see something stupid. And there's Voltaire. As long as they are in England, in France, and in Italy, I often skip many of these chapters. Now, I've gone a little fast here. I might find other things to talk about. I'll be okay, I think. But those chapters are the most trivial, the silliest. For example, Candide gets sick in France. Immediately, Voltaire, the satirist, immediately Candide, who has lots of money obviously, is surrounded by doctors and women who are there to pray for him. Of course, they're all interested in his money. And according to Voltaire, this is kind of a well-known theme of the 18th and 19th century. Seem to be found in Tolstoy and in Mark Twain. Despite the doctor's cares, Candide recovers. I would say this is no longer true in the 20th century. We believe in the efficacy of medicine, in the skills of doctors and our physicians. But in the 18th and 19th century, when the art of medicine was growing so quickly, but still pretty primitive and guesswork, these great authors like Voltaire and Twain and Tolstoy, these noted authors, had their misfortunes with doctors. They paid doctors lots of money and never got better. And then went to other specialists, never got better. And they blamed the doctors. Okay. That kind of satire, and some very silly satire. Okay. Now, Candide had arranged to meet Cacambo in Venice, northern Italy, Venezia, a city of beauty. Excuse me. The most beautiful city in the world as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so Voltaire lands there, and of course Martin is very cynical about this. Yeah, right, we Americans would say, in that tone. Yeah, right, this servant is going to take your 10 million, spend them, and come running back to you to be your servant again when he could be a king. Martin, of course, is cynical about all such things. Candide trusts, and one night they're having dinner, and suddenly Cacambo appears behind Candide. I can't talk with you now. I'm a servant. Konigonde is in Constantinople serving as a slave. What happened? I can't tell you now, but basically what happened was. Anyway, first things first. So, tell me who owns you, and I will free you. Okay. So, Candide gives a diamond to some Jew who are always tricking Cacambo. Of course, the Jews, clever, ruthless dealers, as they had to be, to survive in the world that mistreated Jews. I have to discuss that sometime. But anyway, he frees Cacambo, and Cacambo tells him his story. Cacambo, had gone to Buenos Aires, had paid the governor millions. Of course, the governor had already lost interest in Konigonde. She already bored him. But he had to pay the millions anyway to get her, hire a ship. He too was cheated everywhere he went, and in the end had to become a servant to somebody, and Konigonde, he knows, had been taken to Constantinople in Turkey. And this is where our book will end and conclude gloriously. Okay, so now Cacambo meets Martin, and the three of them hire a boat to go to Constantinople. The novel is reaching its end soon. And the coffee has had a salutary effect on my speaking and on my throat. Salutary, healthy, beneficial, almost. Okay, so they are on a boat, and the boat, like many boats in the Mediterranean, was a galley. Galley meant slaves had to row these boats. Well, the life of a galley slave must have been the most miserable of all human lives. And that's a big statement. But, of course, they row all the time. And millions of people had to do this from the Roman Empire and still in the 18th century. And before the Roman Empire. What a life. And over them, as always, was standing the man with a whip. This was even worse than some forms of that the American slaves endured in the 19th century, in the 18th and 19th, because this was non-stop labor, and the man with a whip right there. Terrible life. And Candide is standing there idly watching these two men side by side who were rowing, because they rowed in pairs mostly, and one of them suddenly drops his oar and says, "Candide." Candide looks at him and thinks maybe he recognizes him. "Oh my God, it's Master Pangloss." And we get a little delicious little glimpse of Martin. Martin with a sarcastic grin on his face, saying, "Is this the great philosopher you've told me about?" Is this the great philosopher? Yes, it's Pangloss. And the man with a whip is on him right away because he dropped his oar. And first, Voltaire says, okay, I'll pay you to release him, and gives him $1 million, something, to release Pangloss. But who is sitting right next to him? "Don't you recognize me?" He doesn't recognize him. It's Konigonde's brother. People pop up all the time. Konigonde's brother, whom Candide had stabbed last in his Jesuit robes, stabbed him apparently to death, and then had taken his clothes, put them on, remember, to escape with Cacambo. He lived. People are so resilient, and people pop up, and we meet people again and again in our lives. Well, this is kind of true, even, or maybe especially in our modern lives, when travel is so facilitated, made easier for us. So, okay, despite the fact that that their their relationship had not been very good, Candide pays $1 million to have him released as well, and they will go to Constantinople together. And his sister, Konigonde, is there. But no more words about this marriage thing, because, of course, if he wants to, Candide will marry her. And the arrogant, stupid, Germanically stupid maybe, but stupid maybe not just Germanically, brother should guard his tongue. Watch what he says. Okay, off they go to Constantinople. At Constantinople, here we go, the famous finale and where the book becomes truly great. The book is memorable and wonderful until the finale, in my opinion. In most people's opinion, the satire, the humor, the wit, the idea even of the travel, the attack on Leibniz's philosophy, the attack on optimism itself, this collection of people, wonderful. But in the final chapters, the final 2 chapters, it becomes, I think, profound. And I'm going to try to explain what I mean. Okay, so at Constantinople, they don't have much money. First they find Kunigonde. Kunigonde is washing plates in the river for a poor nobleman. She has lost all her beauty. There's nothing beautiful about the woman at all. But she doesn't know it. She doesn't realize she has lost her beauty so completely. Candide frees her, buys her freedom, of course, cheated every time. We can assume that. And she makes it clear that she expects Candide to marry her after she has passed through so many hands, and he is still innocent. She's not pretty. After all this, she expects Candide to marry her. And the Baron, his arrogance... Oh, I forgot to tell his story. Okay, good. This comes well. Ça tombe bien. This is a perfect timing. The Baron tells his story. After having been stabbed, he was recovered. He was nursed back to health by some priest who took a special interest. Oh, no. He tells his whole story, and I'm combining things here, but it doesn't matter. The timing is fine. I should have told it before, though, in Paraguay. After recovering from being mortally wounded when the castle fell, when the castle was attacked and everyone was killed, Konigonde was raped, all that, way back in chapter 3, chapter 4, he had been saved by a priest. And he, the Baron, young man, 18, 19, just like Konigonde, just like Candide at that time, was nursed back to health by a priest and kind of kept by the priest. Now, it's not explicit yet, but it will be later. He's homosexual. He's gay. This priest is gay. If he wasn't before, he was now, because the priest who nursed him back to health made him his lover. Now, let's remember the biggest scandal in the Catholic Church right now is the revelation, at least in the American Church, of the homosexuality of large numbers of priests. Here's Voltaire making fun of this, which of course existed in the church before. On the other hand, in the 18th century, that low point of priesthood, as well as in Catholic Protestant, doesn't matter. Of course, many priests openly kept mistresses, concubines, no problem. But many priests through history, of course, have been gay. How many? I wonder. One wonders. Apparently, in the 18th century, though, this was a little more open than perhaps it had been before. And Voltaire satirizes it. Excuse me. So he's nursed back to health, and then that priest sends him to Rome, because anyone who is going to have a career in the church still has to go to the Vatican, spend time in the Vatican at Rome, and so at Rome he becomes a protégé, protected and sponsored by some high prelate, Prelate, high ecclesiastical church official, a cardinal, I think, and it's pretty obvious that he becomes the cardinal's minion. Minion is a Shakespearean word meaning protected boy, but protected means lover, sexual toy of someone. He's thoroughly gay, and he's still good looking, and he advances highly in the church. He becomes a Jesuit priest, and yes, he is sent to South America as a colonel, and that's where Candide had met him before. Now, after being stabbed, what happened? He's nursed back to health. He's sent back to the Vatican, spends some more time in Rome, but then is sent to Constantinople, I guess, must be, is sent to Constantinople as a Catholic priest, and one evening, the weather was hot, he had run into a handsome boy, Muslim boy of course, and the two of them had taken a swim, naked of course, in the Bosporus, in the water there at Constantinople. They were caught by the police, basically, and the Baron was beaten on the soles of his feet. People are always beaten with 100 blows of some stick on the soles of their feet. This is a trick that pedagogues in Korea should learn. Those fond of using the stick. Don't hit their hands. The hands will recover fast. Hit the bottoms of their feet. Well, anyway, and then he was put into the galleys, where he became a galley slave. And, miraculously, he was set in the galley right next to Pangloss, where they could discuss Pangloss's teachings and the very foolish, very silly, in the end, caricature. He's a non-character Many of the characters in the book are caricatures, but many of the characters of any novel have to be caricatures. That is, they are generalized types. Okay, so now we're caught up with him. Candide then buys a small farm in Constantinople, near the Bosporus, the Dardanelles, the sea there. And they all agree, they're all together now, because the old woman is there too. The whole group is there, and oh no, God, oh, wait, back up, two of my favorites. Back to Venice, which had been our last stop. In Venice, Candide and Martin are still arguing, though Candide appreciates Martin a lot. Still arguing, talking philosophy. And Candide says, look at that handsome couple. There's a monk, a Theatine monk, and a pretty girl walking hand in hand, arm in arm, laughing and talking. They are happy, the image of two young lovers. I bet we will find, because Candide has been arguing, there are some people who are happy. I bet we will find them really happy people. Martin says, I bet. So they bet something, a dinner or something. Candide then approaches them and invites them to dinner, and he will pay for everything. They accept, and he questions them and says, please tell me your story. You appear to be such happy young lovers. They tell their stories. First, she shyly says, Master Candide, don't you recognize me? Candide looks. She's Paquette. Paquette is the very servant back at the castle with whom Pangloss had been engaged in the woods doing a physical experimentation. The beginning of the trouble, when Konigonde had observed them having sex in the woods, and then had gotten in trouble and gotten poor Candide in trouble. That maid was Paquette. First of all, Paquette's name is obscene. Paquette refers to the female genitalia, female sexual parts, sarcastically. The name appears in other works in literature too. So Voltaire is being very cynical there. But Paquette had syphilis and had given her syphilis to Pangloss with disastrous results. And Paquette tells her story. No, I would like to kill myself today. I would like to kill myself almost every day. I'm a prostitute. I've had to become a prostitute to stay alive. And she tells what is really a very moving story about her lot, her life as a prostitute, and what it means to be a prostitute. After all, it means to be beaten, cheated, but to have to look pretty all the time, and have to buy at the price of her body clothes to look nice in order to continue to be what? A prostitute. A terrible, terrible life. Almost as terrible as the galley slave, as that of a galley slave. And she had been forced into this. After the castle had been attacked, she too had been taken basically a prisoner by someone, had been forced to be his mistress. No. She had been nursed back to health by a doctor, and the doctor had kept her as his concubine. But the doctor was married, so her life was hell, because the doctor was an ugly and terrible man, and the doctor's wife hated her and would beat her every day. Her life was hell. But finally the doctor then, to rid himself of his wife, had poisoned his wife. Oh, his wife had a cold. That's right. Doctor gave his wife medicine. She died in spasms in 2 hours of terrible convulsions, as several characters do. And but then the doctor had lost interest in her and chased her away. Oh, no. The doctor was brought to trial for murder, and she was brought to trial too. But she had nothing to do with it. She was innocent. But she would have been condemned, but the judge took an interest in her because she was pretty. The judge forced her to be his sexual toy until the judge had lost interest. And then she was turned out, and then began her life as a prostitute. And she's been a prostitute now for a couple of years. She's still kind of pretty, but a terrible, terrible life. So Martin wins that bet. Then the monk tells his story. The monk had been the younger son. Older son got all the property when the parents died. Still the case, maybe. And so he had been forced to become a monk. He hates being a monk. He hates his fellow monks. He hates his monastery where he lives at night, though by day he can travel around. And all the monks feel the same. They all hate it. Many times he has wanted to burn the monastery, set fire to it. But he makes some money giving sermons, though he's cheated of a lot of that by the head monk. But he, for his amusement, pays girls, and now he has this relationship kind of with Paquette. But yes, he hates his life. Martin wins the bet. Giroflée and Paquette join them. What happens? No. They disappear, but they turn up again in Constantinople, and they too join the community. Giroflée, whose name basically means light butterfly, frivolous creature, and Paquette, beautiful. They are members of the community too. So the community settles down, but the Baron still will not tolerate the marriage. So one day, everybody agrees. They sell the Baron. They agree to put the Baron back into the galley as a galley slave, and everybody's glad of that, and everybody who reads the book is glad of it too. And they settle down. Now here we go. Near the farm, each of the people in their little farm community discovers a skill. Konigonde is good at sewing, weaving. The old woman is good at something. Cacambo is good at cooking. Giroflée is a carpenter. That's a nice touch. Christ. Everybody is good at something, even Pangloss. And they all agree that they will basically combine their efforts. The old woman, though, is exhausted from her life and curses her life still. Candide agrees to marry Kunigonde, all that. But he doesn't love her, and she's totally unlovable. But at least he has Martin and Pangloss. So the three of them discuss and philosophize all the time. Candide, Martin, and Pangloss. Wonderful threesome, wonderful. Pangloss kind of in the middle of the cynic, skeptic, and the blind optimist. They find out that in their neighborhood there is a dervish. The dervishes were and are an order, a Sufi order, S-U-F-I. Sufi order, the Sufis generally are mystics, a mystical brotherhood order in Islam. The best of Islam, everyone would agree, historically, and if you ever get to see the whirling dervishes, as I did in Konya, which was their home, that was a high point for me. It's wonderful. But anyway, they are sometimes and were wise people too, and saintly people. A whirling dervish lived nearby, and our three philosophers heard about him and went to see him. They knock on the door. Pangloss speaks, and that's unfortunate. And Pangloss says, please, Master, tell us what we should do to become wise. Because everyone says that you are wise, and we want to learn. We want to be wise. And the dervish basically says, be quiet. Don't talk. Stop talking. And Pangloss is upset, and Pangloss says, well, but that's impossible. What about causation, the philosophical doctrine of causation, that is, everything has some cause. And the best of all possible worlds, basically, his philosophy. At this point, the dervish slams the door in Pangloss's face. So, we have had the message here. En français, te taire. Que faut-il qu'on fasse? What is it necessary that one do? Te taire. Be quiet. Don't talk. Especially don't philosophize. Okay, so we go back to the farm, very modest farm, go back to our labors. But Pangloss continues to talk, and he says, but if you hadn't been expelled from the castle in Westphalian, if you hadn't been with grand kicks in the posterior rear end, wonderful. If you hadn't been sent here and here and here and here, if this and this and this had not happened to you, you would not be here now. Everything happens for the best in the best of all possible worlds. And Martin is totally, of course, snarlingly, mercilessly sarcastic about this nonsense that he's speaking. And we are now on the last page of the novel. And Martin says, yes, but we should work and be quiet. Second time. Pangloss speaks again, and then the final line, the concluding line, here I go. But it's okay, it's not so moving really, it's just enlightening. Candide says, yes, all that is very well, but it is necessary to be quiet and cultivate our garden. Cultivate our garden. Well, the garden is basically the earth that we have been put into. And in Genesis, be fruitful and multiply and work and enjoy this garden that we've been placed in. But Voltaire is, although he refers to that explicitly in Latin, in fact, on the last page, once again his point. Be quiet would be best, but he's already granted again and again in the book that it is a human pleasure to exchange stories, tell stories of where we've been and what we've done, even our sufferings. It's a great consolation in life, and I don't think Voltaire wants to deprive us of that, though I could wonder about that. But the wise man will be quiet, especially about philosophy and philosophical and religious things. Just be quiet. Because here's the point. Words themselves distort reality. This is obvious. Describe anything and you distort it. Describe an experience, describe an object, describe a person, describe a feeling, and you distort it. Words distort everything. Words cannot capture anything. Words form their own realm. And here we've got just the right time. Basically what we have are what I call percipients, that is, people perceiving, percepts, things perceived, and words. This combination is reality. But the trouble is that percipients can't reach percepts, words cannot capture percepts, words are our creation, and so these three dance around, we being we, our bodies, our persons, whatever, part of this dance, but there is no real contact among these three. Okay, that's Cook, that's not Voltaire. But Voltaire does imply, as I said, the name Pangloss implies all talk or gloss over. Now the really profound part, in my opinion, is this. Pangloss uses philosophy, uses it as a screen to distort reality. We philosophize not to get at truth, but to escape from truth. Philosophy and religion too, in my opinion, Religion is more questionable, but I'm sure Voltaire would agree, insofar as one philosophizes or thinks philosophically, or in concepts in religion, as one does, one is distorting reality. Not only that, one knows one is distorting reality. When one philosophizes, one is attempting to avoid truth. Say it again. When one philosophizes, one is not only distorting reality, one is seeking to distort reality. It's the classic example of disingenuity, my favorite word, which is when we know that we are saying something not true. We know it. What do I mean? Basically, we know that we know nothing. Basically, we know that we know nothing. Basically, we know that our words are impotent, that our perceptions are impotent too, erroneous, fallacious, deceptive, and all that. We know all this. We know that truth is unfindable. We know that we are incapable of expressing any truth at all. We philosophize to disguise that from ourselves. Philosophy is a game, religion another, which we use to avoid truth. We use to pretend that we can find truth, or to pretend that we have found truth. Philosophy and religion are screens, verbal constructs, constructions made up of words, pretty words, words that we pretend have some meaning, have some validity. But we know deep down that the words have no validity in themselves. We know deep down that physical reality is, we are cut off from it. We cannot know the Kantian Ding an sich, the thing in itself. We know that we are bound by our perception, by that sense perceptions are real, but the things aren't. We make sense of our sense perceptions, we try to, and create this little world based on words. We try to make sense of our moral lives and our metaphysical lives, that is, of life itself, by words. But we know deep down that our words cannot discover reality, that our sense perceptions cannot discover reality, that our words are simply arbitrary little toys that we have invented, and we arrange the words in patterns. And we try to pretend that the patterns of words, what we speak and what we write, make sense, that they can arrive at truth. But we know deep down that this is false. We use philosophy, and this is what Voltaire is saying. And this is the profound thought that I would say undermines all philosophy, all religion. This makes Voltaire's book maybe the most profound book ever written. Amazing stuff. Thank you.